Good morning. Good morning. Please, if you're wearing a jacket, feel free to doff your jackets. We're having a typical Houston fall day, so thank you for joining us here today. My name is Carrie Pepe, and I currently serve as the chairman of the Memorial Park Conservancy Board of Directors. It's my honor and pleasure to welcome all of you to our 4th annual State of the Park event, and the very first to be held in Memorial Park. We're delighted to share the beauty of the Clay family Eastern Glades with all of our visitors today. We gather at a very momentous time for Memorial Park. In 2015, Houston City Council unanimously approved MPC's master plan. The plan, led by Thomas Waltz and the Nelson Bird Waltz landscape architecture team, laid out a series of projects that were both ambitious in scope and transformational in nature. Now, only 7 years later, MPC and our project partners at the Kinder Foundation, Uptown Houston, and the Parks Department are delivering on that master plan with projects that enhance the experience of park users every day. In July 2020, in the midst of COVID restrictions and with absolutely no fanfare, we opened the Clay family Eastern Glades to the public. I was there that morning when they started to take down the construction fencing that surrounded the site. Park users, mostly joggers and walkers on the SLT, began to filter into the glades for the first time, and the looks on their faces said it all. We had literally hit it out of the park. Go Astros. And just this past Friday, in an October surprise for Houstonians, we opened the newest segment of the SLT. And what a positive surprise it was to the thousands of people who enjoyed the trail and celebration throughout the day and weekend. A sincere thank you to the Kinder Foundation for enabling this project to be delivered years ahead of schedule. Now, the opening of the new land bridge in Prairie is just weeks away. Completion of the land bridge accomplishes a transformative reconnection of the two spheres of the park, north and south of Memorial Drive. The construction progress of the massive land bridge and tunnels has been a source of great interest to Houstonians, over 7,000 of whom turned out to tour the site last spring. Now, as the seeding of 70 acres of native coastal tall grasses begins, we are icing that cake. This new prairie installation is a symbol of MPC's commitment to restoring the park's native ecosystems and habitat and building ecological resilience. While we are delivering these projects with our partners, the fact is that the ongoing care and stewardship of these incredible projects will fall almost entirely on the shoulders of Memorial Park Conservancy. Indeed, that stewardship is our mission, and we welcome the challenge because we see the value in our work so far. And that brings us to why we're here today. We gathered this morning in this amazing setting with so many friends and supporters to proudly share with you the strong state of the park, to offer you our vision of a park that meets the needs of all Houstonians, and to remind you that we need your ongoing support. I say again, we would not be where we are today without the profound generosity and engagement of our partners. Now, as we near completion of these projects, we turn to you for the support MPC will need to care for and maintain these spaces for generations to come. Thomas and his team have created green spaces that resonate with Houstonians, And that means we now welcome over 4 million visitors to the park every year. It also means that our MPC staff of 60 dedicated individuals has their work cut out for them. The proceeds from our event today will help fund park operations and maintenance. As our new projects mature and their care becomes MPC's responsibility, the cost to keep them at their best will only grow. So as you explore and enjoy all that's new at Memorial Park, please be mindful of how you can help. Join one of our leadership circles. Work with your company to become a corporate partner with Memorial Park. Consider a legacy gift to the park. Join our membership program and become a friend of Memorial Park. Maybe pay to park in a convenient spot. Host a picnic or event at one of our lakeside pavilions. And of course, if you're asked to give, please give generously. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for being here for tomorrow. And now, I would like to introduce the President and CEO of Memorial Park Conservancy. For nearly 10 years, Shelley Arnold has overseen the phenomenal growth and success of MPC. She's our most visible advocate, and her dedication to the mission of the Conservancy shines through in everything she does. Please welcome a lady who works to make this park better every single day, Shelley Arnold.
Thank you, Carrie, for those kind words, for that kind introduction. And your leadership, Carrie, your leadership is unwavering. You've enabled MPC to continue this growth during your role as chair and in the years leading up to this on the board. Carrie has unique value. She brings knowledge about prairies. She herself is restoring hundreds of acres of prairie outside of Houston, and brings unique knowledge to help motivate us, to help educate all around, and to help inspire for what we're doing today with the Land Bridge and Prairie and the ecological restoration. And today, what a milestone. Today, this is a milestone, being our first State of the Park in Clay Family Eastern Glades. That is so exciting. Thank you, each of you, for being here. Thank you, those of you who are supporting today's event. And there are so many amazing people here today. So many people that do so much for Houston. At-large council members, Sally Alcorn and David Robinson, if you all could wave. I don't see you, but I know you're here somewhere. And the president and chair of the Houston First, David Mintzberg, has done so much for us in the park and so much for Houston. Of course, we appreciate our Catalyst donors here at the front tables, Nancy and Rich, your teams at the Kinder Foundation, and our master plan, 10-year plan project partners, John Breeding and his team at Uptown Houston. The Parks Department with Kenneth Allen and his team, partnering with Lisa Johnson and her team at GSD, at the General Services Division. These are folks that are making all of this capital work happen with the 10-year projects. I want to do, before we bring him up, a special call out to Thomas Woltz and his team. For nearly 10 years, Thomas and his team, Jeff and company, really have been designing and delivering powerful work that connects us in such meaningful ways to our cultural history, to our ecological history, makes that meaningful today to create a resilient space, and then bridges us to our future, bridges us to Houston's tomorrow. And that's what we're here today for, is for today and for Houston's tomorrow. And thank you again, presenting sponsors at the Kinder Foundation, helping us lead today's event. We also have a number of event sponsors that I'd like to thank. I'd like to thank Sylvia Wolf, who is here today and is a lead sponsor. Cadence Bank, who also is a lead sponsor. And Jill and Dunham Jewett, and and Laura and Tom Bacon. Thank you. And Mike Roma and his team at Merrill Lynch and the RG Group. This is the first time that you've been with us, and we welcome you to the fold. Claire and John Caudell and Elizabeth and Tom Hawley, thank you. And that's Howley, which I should know. And Alice and Peter Arbor, they really had such a strong connection with us, most recently when we went kayaking together along Buffalo Bayou, so thank you very much. And a sincere thank you to everyone who's here today, all the individuals and all the companies who help us with this event. This event is so important for helping us care for the park day after day. That's why we're here today, to care for what we're building, for what we're protecting, for what we're creating for Houston's future and for Houstonians today. And now I'd like to introduce you to someone who's very special to Houston, holds a special place in my heart and so many other people's hearts. Our moderator today is one of the most recognizable women in the Houston media. She is CEO Linda Laurel of Laurel Media. She hosts Our Voices Matter, a podcast. She's the founder of the Linda Laurel Scholarship Fund, which is so impactful, sending so many folks to college and mentoring them throughout their college journey. She's a former TV anchor at KPRC and former Memorial Park Conservancy board member. Please welcome my friend, Linda Laurel.
Thank you so much, Shelley. As they're moving the podium, I'm going to get myself situated here. Hi, everybody. It is so great to see you. Hi, Roxanne. I see hey, Sylvia. I have lots of friends here in the audience, and I really can't tell you how excited I am to be here today and be a part of this incredible event, because I consider this park my park, okay? This is my personal park. I come here all the time. I was here last night walking my grandpuppy, Layla, and I saw them setting up the tent, so I was casing out the place so that I would know where to park and where to come today. And it has been such a joy to be involved with the park on multiple levels. Being here when we opened up Clay Family Eastern Glades and getting to produce that video. And the videos you're about to see today, I had the privilege, honor, and pleasure of producing, helping you understand a little bit more about the backstory of the land, bridge, and prairie that we're about to get to enjoy. So I am honored and thrilled to be here to celebrate, I'll share it with you, our park, okay? It's not just mine. It belongs to all of us. And of course, none of this happens without leadership. So, you know, Shelley is very modest, but we would not be here if not for her leadership as president and CEO of Memorial Park Conservancy. So, yeah, she's incredible. And then the other person whose name you've already heard, who is so central to this entire effort, is Thomas Woltz, the owner of Nelson Bird Woltz Landscape Architects. Please welcome Thomas to the stage. I've been so looking forward to meeting Thomas. We got a chance to meet backstage today for the first time, and the three of us are going to engage in some wonderful conversation because we are literally only a couple of months away from opening the Land, Bridge, and Prairie, which is hard to believe. But we thought it would be great before we begin our conversation to give you a little bit of the backstory of how the construction began and just how it all got started. So let's take a look.
It was 2013 when Nelson Bird Woltz was planning and first shared this big idea of the land bridge. And yet now, to look back and think in just 10 years, this incredible project that's going to restitch the park together is actually happening is it really kind of pinch me moment. I just can't believe it's here.
We entered into a master plan, and from that master plan, which was a beautiful guide for really making that park something all Houstonians could utilize. And then after that came the 10-year plan, the Eastern Glades project, the Land Bridge project. And so it's been really incredible to see that effort grow and multiply.
It's always interesting when you start a project, how you frame it. And I remember Thomas talking about how he couldn't really believe that this park was almost twice the size of Central Park, because he says you just don't experience it that way. So that idea of how do we reconnect the park, how do we let people access all of it safely, is kind of where that vision came from. And I think that Nelson Birdwoltz felt it was possible to put this on paper because they were told to think big. And to make that connection at a scale, I remember Thomas talking about being able to really cross Memorial Drive and maybe you wouldn't even know you were over the roadway. That was the kind of experience they were looking for.
We've sort of lived with the tunnels for a little while. You know, I think they've turned out beautifully. We looked at the structures, you know, the sort of iconic arches and how to do that, how to build it, where they would be made, how they'd be made, how to arrange the site to accommodate them, at least in a conceptual level, and some pricing. The contractor Telpson has been really critical in it, working with Telpson and trying to understand what to do with Memorial Drive. We had to arrange the site with enough room to build the new tunnels, but keep the roadway open. All the spoil that we removed to build the Eastern Glades Lake, we moved over to the footprint of the land bridge and used that 90,000 cubic yards to build the land bridge. But I think the other big challenge that we still really work on basically almost daily is creating a prairie in a zone where it was ball fields and parking lot and roadway, and that became the excavation area. We knew we wanted real experts in the field, and so that's where we really have leaned on our staff, our grassland experts and our conservation experts, and then the Nature Conservancy and Wildlife Habitat Federation and our soil scientists to help us understand how to really build up a soil section that can support and really foster the growth of the prairie over the next 5 to 10 years until it can really mature.
The land bridges themselves allow people up and over, but what I think a lot of people may not be aware of immediately is that there is a crossing under Memorial Drive. And this is both for drainage, but was really designed very specifically with animals in mind. The scale of it, the addition of light wells into this culvert. We know it's important for animals to have light to be able to find their way through. That was a critical part of it. And then we'll have this re-established coastal prairie. And along that edge, you have extra rich environments for greater species diversity and even larger populations of species.
We see this as a big example of bringing this habitat back to the center of the city where it existed for so long. Really to show this as an example of the value in it as both supporting species that have moved out of the area because this habitat really just doesn't exist, but also the real ecological benefit of the absorption of stormwater, the treatment of that runoff. And so I think that's where we're going to see the best benefit of it.
I think my favorite part of the physical project is just the movement of the land itself and how the different paths that wind through the site are going to give you so many different experiences, so many vistas and perspectives that as park goers in Memorial Park you wouldn't have had before.
We've harvested sections of Memorial Drive and we're going to build a little bit of like a fun staircase up one of the mounds. It connects directly to the Seymour-Lieberman Trail and goes up the East Mound. And so if you're on a run on the Seymour-Lieberman Trail or a walk and you want to get a little hill work in or you just want to go up to the East Mound and take a look, It's a really fun way to reuse some of that concrete that was Memorial Drive.
I can't wait till we can ride our bikes, go with our grandkids, go up and sit on the mounds that are beautiful and vegetated, and we have trees out in the prairie. And just as Eastern Glades has transformed a part of the park that was inaccessible, I think this is going to totally transform how we view Memorial Park and how we use Memorial Park.
Well, I think so too. I think it's going to completely transform the way we view and the way we use Memorial Park. Thomas just touched my arm a moment ago as the video was beginning, and he said, "This is really making me emotional. I'm feeling really emotional." And I love that, because clearly this means something to you. So what's going on? Tell me about your emotions and why you're feeling that way right now.
Oh, wow.
Seriously. Why is this so important to you? Why is this project so important to you?
Well, good morning, everyone. Amazing starting question. Let's see. Easy to answer. I made some choices as a young man to dedicate my life to connecting people to an authentic understanding of nature for free, as much as I can do until my last day on this earth. So by looking carefully,
Yeah, now I'm going to start crying.
but looking carefully at land and asking land its story before you begin a design, asking its ecological and its cultural historic story, to understand the role of First Nations peoples, of early settlers, in this case, of the history of the World War I training camp, and then the transformation to a park that should stand as a memorial to their civic contribution and personal sacrifice for the common good. So this land is incredibly full of powerful stories, and it has become the model of my entire mission in life. So when I stand here 10 years in and I see all of these friends from a decade ago, it is absolutely a family reunion. And to sit and look out to the glades and to have spent the morning on the mounds on a construction site visit, it's all coming true. And so it's a life moment for me, and that's why it means a lot, because we are designing and building work for people we don't know and for generations we don't know.
And now you know why I asked that question, and I'm so glad that I did, because we would not have gotten that backstory of your personal commitment and mission and the reason that you do it. And Shelley, that leads me, I mean, he's kind of answered the question, which is why Thomas Woltz and why Nelson Bird Woltz as the design firm to lead this effort. Take us into the room when you guys were deciding who you wanted to bring in and what that process was and why you chose Thomas, although I think we can all guess after that answer.
He did kind of answer it, but there are some other things that aren't known by most in the room here. There was a process that was put in place that was led by Sarah Newberry, who's here, by Chris Knapp, who's not here today, by our board members at the time, which was almost 10 years ago. It was exactly 10 years ago, because it started in late 2012. And it was a look at what we could do. I wasn't a part of this yet, at what we could do to make, the catalyst was to recover from the drought. That was what prompted this look. But it really came together as a Conservancy-driven, city-driven effort and Uptown Development Authority with John Breeding in a leadership role with Anise Parker and Andy Icken, trying to think how we could not just fix what was wrong, but transform Memorial Park to be the park that Houston deserves, to be the park that represents Houston and represents Houston going forward. What is sustainable? There were so many questions. And so Sarah Newberry and Chris Knapp identified globally leading firms to consider and put together with the Conservancy a team to consider these firms, to interview these firms. And they narrowed it down to 4, and Thomas and his team were one of the 4 firms, Nelson Bird Woltz, brought them in for interviews, and I was interviewing at the time. I was asked to be part of this as well, as in the role that I'm in, and so I was invited to participate in the interview processes. And I didn't have myself clear criteria when we first started listening to the interviews. I was a candidate myself. I was listening, and I heard 2 of them, and I thought each of them was powerful. And then I heard a third, and I thought, oh, this one's the one. And I hadn't heard Thomas. I missed his first interview. And as he spoke, many of us in the room cried, especially me, but many of us cried. And what became clear and what set him apart and his team apart is their approach to planning. So it's not just the relevance of the work that they had done, which was ecological restoration, public spaces, but it's the way they approach planning in terms of asking questions and listening. So listening to the stories of the land, listening to the facts, listening to the science, listening to the history and the research, listening to Houstonians, asking questions and listening. And so they committed to us and worked with us for almost 2 years in listening and researching and getting to know every single inch of this park on the ground, on mountain bikes, in the mud, by foot, before even picking up the proverbial pencil to start designing. We included 3,300 Houstonians in this process we invited all. That's who participated. So that's why we chose Thomas and his team, the passion and the approach, the commitment, the alignment of values, and we've grown together since, and it is also my life mission.
I didn't realize that you began your journey with Memorial Park Conservancy around the same time. I guess I wasn't really thinking about that. That's so interesting. So on your website, Thomas, a part of your mission statement says, "We believe in the power of design to positively shape communities and to reveal the beauty and complexity of our environment and our place in the world." And I think that pretty much sums up, what we've been talking about in terms of your approach. So you and your firm have done some iconic work throughout the country. What sets this apart in your mind from other projects of this scale that you have taken on?
There is no other project of this scale.
Really? This is the biggest?
Yeah, the acreage, the capacity for this city and its political and private leadership to grab onto a gigantic vision and make it happen is unprecedented in my experience. The scale of the acreage. I remember at the end of an early presentation, we had just shown some sketches and Ed Wolf said, "What color are we going to paint it? That's all I need to know, and we're going to build this." So I realized I am in a can-do city, and we can think at the highest level of our art, and it will be executed exquisitely with the highest level of horticultural care, of craftsmanship, and big vision. This was a city that could embrace big vision. And I had already seen the commitment to parks in Houston. Houston has led its transformation with the landscape. It really is extraordinary. And the commitment to, again, to people that individuals may not know, but they know it is essential for the health of the citizens that they have good, connected, healthy landscapes. So I think it's unprecedented. I know it's unprecedented for me in its sheer scale, the scale of the operations, the scale of the transformations. And this is a reminder that opportunity grows from tragedy. Because remember, there was 4 years of drought.
I remember it well. Driving through, this was where we're sitting right now was completely dead. It was all gone.
Yeah. And my first visit, I remember that feeling. It was like a horticultural morgue. It was a cemetery of plants, and it was so upsetting. And the idea that we could reset giant-scale ecologies to be healthy and resilient for the long-term future, because as I said in those early public meetings, drought will come again to Houston, and flood will come again to Houston. So let's invest in the most resilient ecologies that have thrived in this region for thousands of years. And that's why we're leaning on...
That's what you meant by listening to the land.
Correct. So that's why we're leaning on dry prairie, wet prairie, post-oak savanna, mixed hardwood and pine forest as the ecosystems that we're restoring at this massive scale. Not only do they perform incredible services of carbon sequestration, improving stormwater, slowing stormwater. I mean, the entire wet prairie to the south of the land bridge and prairie will hold much of the stormwater of the southern and northern parts of the park.
That's just extraordinary.
So we're leaning on these resilient ecosystems that is our best chance of something to survive the climate extremes of the future.
So I would imagine that there have been a few challenges along the way. So Shelley, I'm going to ask you from the Conservancy's standpoint what you think some of the challenges were, I guess, in the earlier stages of the project. And then, Thomas, I'm going to ask you the same question from your perspective, and then how you were able to overcome them.
There were really, at the outset, there were a few challenges. One of them was a mistrust and a misperception of our intentions and of our abilities. And I'd say the mistrust related to intentions partly stemmed, it was surprising, but then not, with our affiliation with Uptown Houston. And I will give John credit for, John and his team allowed this to happen. John and his team funded, because the TERS annexed Memorial Park, that's where the mistrust came from. People thought, oh, you're gonna turn it into the Riverwalk. You're gonna turn Memorial Park into Uptown. That's where you're gonna develop Memorial Park. That's where the mistrust came from. And instead, we turned that around rapidly. We brought in a team of volunteer, I invited the Sierra Club and others who were mistrusting into the fold and said, if you don't believe our intention, help us find the experts, bring them into the process. And so I sat with the Sierra Club and named 25 people who were all scientists or ecologists or knowledgeable organizations to participate in the process. And while we were doing that, with John Breeding and Uptown, who were really provided the initial funding to allow the whole planning process to happen for several years so that we could stand up our own organization and so that we could move forward in a much more trust-based situation. And that worked.
So what you're saying is that you took an inclusive approach.
Yes.
And this entire project has been one that has included pretty much every aspect of Houston's society in terms of bringing it to fruition. And I know that's part of what you were talking about in the public-private partnership, and we'll get into that more later. But I wanted to ask you, Thomas, I guess from a design standpoint, were there any challenges or things that came up that maybe you weren't expecting, and how did you address those?
Well, my answer to that question, when you said it, I immediately flashed to one of the lesser-known Olympic sports. I think it's called curling, where there's a big fat lug of, I think, metal.
Yeah, I still don't get that sport.
And there are all these, you don't know where I'm going, but stay with me, please.
I know, I can't wait to see where this is going.
And I feel like our work at Nelson Bird Waltz was the big fat lug of metal. And there were all these incredible people on the ice ahead of us sweeping to make it work. There was Chris Knapp and Sarah Newberry and Steve Jenkins and Shelley and the Conservancy and the Kinder Foundation and Uptown TERS and Denise Parker and just like, and we just, our big fat lug of a master plan just kind of kept going.
Along.
And so we were aided in success by an untold number of allies and smart, passionate people. And the reason we all have worked so well together is we trust each other. And just like an Olympic team, you have to have trust. Someone is pushing that lug and everyone is doing their part to make sure that this big bird comes in for a beautiful landing.
Such a beautiful analogy. I love that. Isn't that great? I'm totally never going to forget that. I am never going to forget that. I love it. I love it. Okay, so we have another brief video that we're going to share with you that's going to talk a little bit more about this extraordinary, inclusive, collective, public-private partnership that has led us to this moment. And then we'll talk some more on the other side. So let's take a look.
I knew this is something that I wanted to be a part of, and I knew it had to happen.
The Memorial Park 10-year plan and the projects it supports, including the Land Bridge and Prairie, are made possible because of a forward-thinking public-private partnership.
This city gave to us. We had a furniture store. People bought from us. This is my city. They took care of us. Now it's time for us to take care of them.
The Wolf family is just one of countless Houston families and individuals who have stepped up to help fund multiple projects. First, Clay Family Eastern Glades. Now, the Land Bridge and Prairie. It started with the catalyzing gift from the Kinder Foundation.
In 2018, we really started negotiating an agreement with the Kinder Foundation that became the 2018 Tri-Party. That allowed us to, we knew we'd have it funded so we could move into design the project. We have so many people working on that team, both from the owner side, the Uptown Development Authority, the Kinder Foundation, a huge team of consultants and experts on the prairie. The Nature Conservancy has team members, Wildlife Habitat Federation, and then our team from Nelsonburg Woltz, Gunda, they're soil specialists and structural engineers. The public-private partnership component of this, the real investment in improving the park, restoring this ecology, overcoming the division of Memorial Drive. I mean, I think that investment and effort in reconnecting the park, I think, is a national story.
From a national sense, when you look at a project like this, in terms of promoting it, in terms of iconic spaces and providing outdoors and recreational opportunities, a park of that size, one of the largest urban forested parks in the country. To expand on that as a national model, it showcases our entire park system.
I think that what I've really taken away from seeing these partnerships at work is the ability to secure maintenance and long-term care of the projects that we're building together. That is something that it's hard to raise money around, but with the public coming in and really taking the heavy lifting on infrastructure and maintenance. The private's also doing maintenance, but it's really together that I think a project like this can happen.
When you think about the completion of the project itself, it's just one component of many for the development of Memorial Park, connecting north and south, having additional space to relax, to picnic, to watch birds, to walk. Memorial Park is already a park of much variety in terms of passive and active recreation. So this is just another opportunity to expand on what's there. And then when you think citywide in terms of flooding and connecting to the bayous and the trail system, it broadens the reach of parks and open spaces throughout the city.
I think the Land Bridge, I hope, is really a symbol that people come to see as an example of how we can reimagine ourselves, our relationship to nature, even within a city like Houston.
I think when you get to the top of the mounds and you see downtown and you see uptown, just 35 feet in the air totally changes your perspective in Houston.
I think this is a wonderful reflection on the city of Houston and the people of Houston, that they want their Memorial Park to be what it's becoming.
You're gonna get to get out of your car and explore more of Memorial Park than you ever could without even being aware of cars again. I mean, that's just huge to me.
Use the trail system, walk around, learn a little bit about the park itself, the history. It's rich in history.
It's just a gift to our community.
I think it's going to really help Houston show that we're not just catching up when it comes to making parks. We are setting an example and looking forward to how should parks be made.
In so many cities and urban environments, people look to the governmental structure to solve problems. But in Houston, people tend to come together, create a self-defined task force, and go change the world.
I love that. We go change the world. We come together and we just get it done, right? Just get it done. So, what do you think, Shelley? What do you think that this beautiful expansion of the park, the opening of the land bridge and prairie, what do you think, first of all, that it will mean to our city on a local level, and then on a national level? Because Kenneth talked about that so beautifully in the piece about the potential national impact of what we're doing here. Talk to me about that.
Well, I think you asked local. I'll answer that first. On a local level, this will be a place where every day everyone can go and just have fun. It's just going to be, it's a great amenity for Houstonians, not just park users, all Houstonians. I think it'll draw new people, picnicking, trail walking, exploring and connecting with nature, and it will provide information and visuals to connect back with our ecological and cultural history as well. I think it'll just be fun. New vistas of uptown, of downtown, breezes, something we could really use now. If we were on top of the land bridge and prairie, we would get that now. But that's locally. It will be a unique experience for Houstonians, and nationally, I think it will be very important for Houston, for the image of Houston. This is a time, to steal Tom Bacon's phrase, where green wins over gray. So Houston is not thought of as a place where green and parks went over roadways, and this is exactly what's happening with the land bridge and prairie. It's going to be something that is unique. In it, you hear about connections, you hear about bridge connections or nature bridges in different parts of the world and different parts of the U.S. The land bridge and prairie is much more than that. Ours is much more than that. It solves a complex and multitude of sort of challenges and opportunities, from stormwater management to carbon sequestration, to connecting the soils back together at the microbial level, which is important to reconnecting a bisected wildlife corridor, and then just being fun and beautiful and vistas and all the other things I've mentioned. That creative and complex problem solving, sorry I have this fly here, will really put Houston on a map in a different way than we've experienced before.
So Thomas, where are you based? In New York, DC? Where are you based?
Charlottesville, Virginia.
Virginia.
And New York City.
Okay.
And then we have a third office in Houston.
Okay, all right. So I'm just curious about what the perception of Houston is on the East Coast, and how you think what we're doing here will change that perception on a national level.
I think you are walking the walk every day in Houston. When I look at the incredible work at the Buffalo Bayou Park, Discovery Green, this incredible park, Herman Park. I mean, you have a suite of unique landscapes, each responding to a different idea of landscape, right? So we say, oh, parks, but what kind of parks? And you have an index of all different kinds of landscapes for the public to enjoy, fully accessible. I think the big national story here that I'm seeing, and that I think of when I think about this project, and in particular the land bridge and prairie, it is an example of a project led by a profession that very few people know. If I sit down on an airplane, which is my natural habitat, it turns out, the boarding gate of airports is my natural habitat, and someone says, oh, what do you do? If I say I design public parks, they ask me a question about Yosemite or Central Park. If I say I'm a landscape architect, they ask me a question about their backyard.
Wow.
So we have a kind of definition problem, and I think
Okay.
I mention that because I think this is an important national story, because the Land Bridge and Prairie, as Shelley described, is a massive infrastructure project, but it's many infrastructures. It is the human experience in the landscape, in a public landscape that is free to them. It is stewarding and cleaning stormwater. It is a resilient landscape in the face of drought and flood. It is accommodating traffic that is absolutely essential. So it is, that moment is an interweaving of stormwater, wildlife corridor, transportation corridor, human corridor, all set within a restoration ecology project. As billions of dollars funnel down through this United States to infrastructure projects, I hope people will look to this one and say, we can put the public back in public works. We can invite the public in artful ways when we do stormwater management, sewage treatment, highway projects. All of these giant infrastructure projects need a landscape vision that stewards both the history of that place and the ecology of that place. So for me, the national story here is inspiring a whole new vision of infrastructure.
And it's so, and yeah, that's, you just gave us our media plan for how we need, seriously, for how we need to be promoting this, you know, on a national level, and really looking at the specific elements that are a part of this whole. And then the other thing is that it's forward thinking. You know, as you mentioned, you know, all of these things that are part of the infrastructure will also help to address future climate challenges. It will help to address, you know, problems that we probably haven't even thought of yet because of the forward-thinking nature and because you were listening to the land when you undertook this project. And then thinking about going forward, and we've touched on this a little bit in the videos, and I'd like to explore a little bit more of it now, and that is the caretaking and the maintenance. You know, they're just beginning to you know, plant everything in the prairie and on the bridges, and they will grow, and then they will have to be maintained. So, Shelley, talk a little bit about that, especially as it relates to the public-private partnership's role in the maintenance and caretaking going forward.
So what we're planting, we're doing an ecological restoration. So the intention, and so far the successful undertaking here in Eastern Glades, is to restore the ecology so that they're more self-sustaining, so that they not only create habitat and enjoyment, but they require over time, as they're established, less maintenance. And we do have maintenance. We have maintenance that will always be, but it should be less, that is related to taking out invasives. But once the native ecologies are established, they should do a good job crowding out the invasives or keeping them out better. But we will always have that need. And of course, we have need for everyday break, fix, everyday, keeping it clean, keeping it safe, picking up trash, keeping our visitors answering questions. But what was the second part of your question?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Oh, the public-private partnership.
Oh, yeah.
The public-private partnership.
You're supposed to remember.
I got so lost in my answer.
I'm thinking about the next question, too, when I'm
okay.
going to follow up to what you're saying.
So the public-private partnership is something, actually, I wanted to say that is, I think, differentiating and distinguishing for Houston from what I am hearing. We might not have founded this model, but we certainly are not just a fast follower, but now a leader. And the part of the leading part of that is working together, is coming together, both the public sector and the private sector, when we're embarking on a big journey like this one, to not just build, but care for. So to ensure that we have ways to care for. And that both comes from assurances and guarantees, contractual guarantees from the public sector and from the private sector. It's funny because without the public sector involvement, the private sector won't participate, and without the private sector involvement, the public sector would be less inclined to participate. It's a two-way street. And so you have to come together both and commit. And it takes it takes innovation, it takes leadership, and it takes commitment. And so we still have a lot of fundraising to do. That's the private sector side. That's why we're here today. But still, our work, again, with Kinder Foundation, with Andy Icken, the mayor's office, with John Breeding, that, and with Kenneth Allen, that is the public-private sector model that we're following. And as you can see, it is working.
It is. And Thomas, from your perspective, especially having been engaged in projects across the country, do you see the kind of model that we have used here in Houston as something that will become a national model going forward?
I do. I think we live in an era, at least for the short window of my professional career, that we are completely dependent on the co-leadership between political entities and private entities to move the public landscape forward at the highest level of quality. I mean, I think about in the 19th century what post offices looked like. Like, we built temples to this audacious idea of the US Postal Service, and now they're off-the-shelf
not so much,
prefab sheds. And it just shows a shift in what the civic realm deserves and should look like. And I think these public-private partnerships are filling the gap to elevate the civic realm to the highest and best that we can produce. And I think Memorial Park is the flagship of that nationally, showing that a new park can achieve that level of quality of construction, design excellence, and absolutely the vision here includes maintenance. And one of the things I've enjoyed over my career is the continuous engagement long after a landscape is completed. So we have one client that I've met with once a month for 24 years. And my career is only 25 years long. So we continue to get together and talk about the pruning of trees, replacement of plants, the expansion of different ideas. And we've been implementing that master plan for 24 years now. So
I love that.
Staying a partner, because it's like the way you recognize your child from far, far away. You just know it intimately. And the longevity of that dialogue allows you to participate in the inevitable, unexpected transformation of that landscape.
So how do you see your partnership with Memorial Park Conservancy going forward into the future? What does that look like for you?
I don't think it's a large engagement, but I hope it's a regular engagement of annual site visits to walk the park, see how things are doing, make suggestions, listen to feedback. Because I think we have to understand as a society that setting in motion a giant and complex ecosystem will take time. It eroded over decades or centuries. We're rebuilding it in a couple of years. So it will change, it will transform, and I am praying for the support of this community as we watch this fragile prairie on raw soils take root and grow. It is a slow process, but it will last centuries. But it will not look like the aesthetic that some people will expect. They'll say,
Not right away.
not for
They'll
5
say,
years.
this is what we paid for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the vision of Sylvia Wolf and the Kinder Foundation to support rebuilding an entire ecosystem, knowing that it's not going to look like an English park. It's going to look like a real Texas prairie.
So Shelley, I'm sure you guys really talked a lot about that during this whole process. Tell us what we can expect the prairie to look like over the next 5 to 10 years. What are we going to see?
Well, when you first see a prairie plant growing, most of its energy is in establishing the root systems. So what you might see at first on top is very small for a while. It might be months, it might be years, it depends on the plant. But the roots grow 8 to 12 feet deep, and those roots pull down the water and pull in the carbon dioxide. Then, once the roots are established, the plants grow. Some plants grow faster than others, some plants will grow fast. But we try to manage expectations by letting people know that what you look out on at first will largely be low to the ground, and it will look like grasses, and over time, beautiful waving grasses and flowers. There are a number, if you were to visit Katy Prairie or the Deer Park Prairie, that will give you a good sense of what ours will look like in the future. Those are beautiful restoration efforts and protection efforts. And Thomas can probably add to that.
No, I just want to add, I do want to add to that. There's another aspect that will be the joy of seeing red-eyed vireos and full of birds and life in this giant living bowl of native prairie will be full of splendid life. And I think that brings a kind of joy that you can uniquely get here. If you want reflecting pools and formal lawns and highly mowed grass that's irrigated, there are other beautiful parks to enjoy. But this one is going to present you with an authentic scoop of Texas ecosystem, and I think it will bring to you a living and thriving landscape that I hope over time will shift our aesthetic away from things that have a giant footprint of mowing and maintenance and drenched with water.
Just
And
letting nature be nature.
it shifts our aesthetic. It will require an aesthetic shift, but will reduce our footprint dramatically.
And that leads me to my next question, which is about the wildlife that we can expect to see. What will we be seeing? Give us an example, one or both of you.
I'll start. We have, well, first of all, what you plant, the soils allow the plants to thrive. The plants attract insects, the insects attract birds and other animals. So it's a kind of a cumulative effect of a wildlife shift. We did what we call a bioassessment in 2016 before we started executing any of the master plan projects. And that was, a project that cost several $100,000. We spent an entire year looking at what lives in the soils, in the grasses, in the trees, in the water, everywhere in the park. So we have a baseline by area, by zone. So we have a baseline of what lived in the area of the land bridge at that time, the number of birds, the number, et cetera. So based on what we plant, we believe that we will increase, for example, the number of bird species that come to that area. The last number that I saw was by 15 or 20 bird species on a basis of about, I think 80, it was 60 or 80. It's a significant increase. And that, that translates to the reptiles and the amphibians and the birds and the insects, but you might be able to speak more specifically.
You nailed it. This morning on our construction site visit, Randy Odenay and I were out, and a magnificent hawk came in and swept down and landed right in front of us in the newly planted trees of the wet prairie. And I thought, I'm in the center of Houston, the landing strip of the southern migratory flyway. Gulf Coast, Texas is an essential landing pad for migratory birds coming south and coming north and south. And just thinking that this massive oasis will welcome all people, but also these magical messengers that come to us in the form of birds and insects.
So that hawk was saying thank you. Thank
It was
you.
saying it's lunchtime.
It's lunchtime. Thank you for creating a space for me. Okay, so we have actually a few questions that were pre-submitted, and so I'm going to ask those right now. And the first one's we talked a little bit about how the prairie is going to be maintained, but specifically the questions are, will it be watered and weeded?
Over time, it will not be watered. We're doing, some selective watering to establish, for example, the trees that we've planted. Over time, it will sustain itself. And so that is the idea, to pull back on water so that the plants thrive. They're resilient in times of drought. They're resilient in times of freeze. I'll give you an example, actually. We planted eastern glades with natives, hundreds and hundreds of species of native plants, native trees. We had barely had it planted when the freeze came in February of 2021. And in discussions with my teams, we did not lose one plant. We planted correctly. We lost pipes and we lost, all kinds of other things. We lost the hard structure and rebuilt that, but we didn't lose a plant. And that is the idea behind these plantings being able to withstand droughts and hurricanes and all of these natural disruptions. They are natural, they're native, they're natural disruptions. Weeding, we will likely always need to do some weeding. Over time, it should be less. And that's what we're finding here.
And speaking of weeding, that was another question, is about weeds here in the Eastern Glades area. Will they be controlled, and what will replace them?
Well, I think that's a great question. Someone asked, someone said, I've seen some weeds in Eastern Glades, what's happening? And first I'll say, what looks like a weed to someone might actually be a native plant. So there is a big misconception, really. So we have a lot of education to do. But it is true, I'm sure, that there are weeds that or I should say, non-native invasives that we would like to extract. And we are doing that all the time. And I don't know who asked that question, but I would invite you to, send and, tell us where you saw what you saw. And we will either share with you that it is actually something desirable, or we will say, we didn't know about it and now we're on it, or hopefully we'll say, we know about it, we knew about that and we're on it. And Corey Pfeifenberger on our team is our leader for park operations, and we came down from Denver and has a long time horticulturalist and ecological leader, and we're thrilled to have Corey down here. And that is what Corey and her team will be caring for and are caring for now.
Wonderful. And then the third question is about the cowpeas. Are the cowpeas planted to put nutrients in the soil? Who's picking them? And what will replace them in the medians?
Would you like to speak to at least?
You go ahead for the establishment.
Well, they are to help put is nitrogen or nitrogen in the soil. So legumes or bean plants, I'm learning these things, help put nitrogen in the soil that is depleted. So they help get the soil ready for future plantings. And so we refer to things like that as cover crops. So we do successional planting. I don't know what will replace, however. I'm just not that knowledgeable.
The median's going to be a mix of native grasses, so you'll have that same kind of diversity moving down the medians as well. So this first stage of improving and building soil, you have to build the soil biology, because the biology in the soil, the mycorrhizae, the beneficial bacteria that's in soil, that is how nutrients are transferred to roots. So it all begins with the soil. And if the soil is healthy, the plants will become healthy. So it's a multi-stage process. But how exciting when leadership is knowledgeable and the advocate and owns this project in such a great way.
Shelley knows
That's
everything.
fantastic.
Okay, I'm just saying. Okay.
That's very generous.
I mean, I remember when we were working on the Eastern Glades video, and before it was open to the public, and we of course were shooting behind the curtains and everything, and Shelley gave me a personal tour of this whole area that we're sitting in now, and she was pointing out every single flower and every single reason why this was done this way and that was done that way. And now I give my own personal tours of Eastern Glades, because I don't know as much as she does, but she gave me enough knowledge to know that when I'm introducing someone to this area, I can tell them things that they might not otherwise know because of your knowledge, my dear. Just wanted you to know that. So as we begin to wrap up, I want to ask you both, what has been the favorite part of specifically the process of bringing the Land, Bridge, and Prairie to life, because that's what we're here to celebrate today. As it gets ready to open in the next couple of months, when you look back over it, what's been the most rewarding aspect for you? Shelley, I'm going to start with you.
I hadn't thought about it yet, but it's really seeing how people come together to make it happen, because, I mean, no one could do this. If it just had sort of one group of advocates, it wouldn't happen, or one group of experts. It's relying on all the expertise, all the goodwill, all the cheerleading, all the advocacy, all the public support from city council, from mayor. all the private sport, and I don't just mean dollars, I mean people telling the story, people getting others engaged and motivated and excited. The partnerships, the expertise that comes together to rally, that is, to me, that's the most beautiful part of it. It's, we're in a time right now where there's so much divisiveness in society and amongst friends, amongst family. It is wonderful to come together, and that, to me, is the most beautiful part of it.
Amen. Amen. Thomas, you started off on an emotional level today, so we know how much this means to you. So what has been the most rewarding aspect of this project?
The fact that there was the visionary trust in the planning process to step forward with the funding of this giant bridge that unlocks the connectivity for much of the rest of this part of the city. By building the land bridge earlier in the process, we present to the public, if you imagine a connected horseshoe of 1,400 acres seamlessly. And by getting this project in place, it becomes the gateway to all of the restoration, the paths, the trails, and boardwalks through the entire southern half of the park. Remember in the video, Randy mentions that the footprint of the southern part of the land bridge lands where parking lots, ball fields, a road parallel. So that was a underutilized, very disturbed place. We moved all the ball fields to the north, and Sheila Condon executed the construction of those fields to liberate and reconnect without any interruption the entire southern portion of the park. That then gets us to the center point north-south line, which gets us to Uptown, which links us to all, these linkages are absolutely incredible in opening up an interconnected system within Houston. So the bridge is not just about north and south of the park. In the 1920s, it was a shell road through the park, tiny road. In the 1950s, it became a 6-lane highway. So it's like a river you can't cross safely, and now you can. But it's a gateway not just from north to south of this park, it really starts to connect giant portions of the city. And I think that was the most exciting thing about this gift and what I'm most grateful for.
Well, we're all very grateful, and we can't wait for it to open, which is happening in December, but we also have other things to look forward to. So tease us a little bit, Shelley. Tell us what's coming up.
Well, besides the Land Bridge and Prairie opening, we have some exciting projects underway that will come online next summer. We have the running complex area, and so that's a timing track, a cafe. So that's big news. Everyone's going to be real excited to have another cafe in the park on the south side, and an event plaza, and just a nice gathering space. And so one of the things that we heard in public input is that Houstonians wanted more places to gather inside of their public park, inside of their memorial park. We created this. We're creating the Land Bridge and Prairie, which will have wonderful gathering spaces. And 6 months later, we'll be opening the running complex area, which will also have more gathering spaces. And then down the line, we'll have the Memorial Groves project. We'll have a Southern Arc Trail. We'll have a number of other, I'd say, past Memorial Groves, smaller footprint projects, but very important projects to come. Between now and 2028, we have still many exciting things to come. And I hope that all of you know about the opening last Friday, the surprise opening of the Seymour Lieberman Trail bridges right over here. If you haven't enjoyed those, please go experience them. It's a whole new, wonderful, immersive nature experience for Houstonians.
We have so much to look forward to, but what's coming up first, of course, is the opening of the Land Bridge and Prairie in December. Thomas, our city owes you a huge debt of gratitude. No, seriously, for your vision, for your passion, for your knowledge, your expertise, and your humanity that you bring to this project. Thank you on behalf of the city of Houston. And I just want to ask you to leave us with some words of whatever you want to share with us as we as we wrap up and go enjoy the rest of this beautiful day.
Thank you so much. That's very kind, but it is to a huge team within my office and beyond, so many people who contributed. So I'll accept that on behalf of a small army at Nelson Bird Woltz who have devoted so much of the last decade of their professional lives to this place. So I think in parting, I feel as citizens in a democracy, it is incumbent upon us in a social contract with the freedoms that we enjoy as a democratic society to tend others, to tend the land, and to tend a more sustainable and viable future for everyone. And this park is a major step in that direction of a deep commitment to the civic well-being of how we live together in a democracy.
Now I'm choked up. That was a beautiful way for us to end. Ladies and gentlemen, Thomas Woltz and Shelley Arnold.
Thank you.
Oh, boy. Thank you to everyone who has come out today. Thank you to those who submitted questions. We love everything that you are all doing for this community. As was said earlier, please feel free to continue donating to the park. We're going to need your donations going forward to maintain it. You do have donate cards on your table. You can also scan the QR codes on your programs, and just continue to come out and enjoy the park, use it, bring your friends, bring your families, tell everybody what we've got going on here, because there is a lot going on. Shelley, I'll give you the final word.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you for helping make my city, our city better. Linda, thank you for telling the stories of our city. Before we close this event, I wanted to we have a big announcement, and that is the opening of our Land Bridge and Prairie. Please put on your calendars, and you are the first to know that the biggest picnic in Texas will be happening on December 10th and 11th, a Saturday and a Sunday, on the Land Bridge and Prairie. And so picnic as you like. You can bring a picnic basket. You can buy a picnic basket. We will have a 2-day public party on December 10th and 11th. So that's a really, really going to be a historic day for us in Houston. So put that on your calendar. That's number one. And then number two, I wanted to thank our project partners again. And thank you to all of our donors who have made this 10-year plan up to this point possible and going forward. Thank you again to Sylvia Wolf, the City of Houston, the Parks Department, to Clay Development and Construction, to Laura and John Arnold, the Brown Foundation, Houston Endowment, Polly and Murray Bowden, Polly's here, the Cullen Foundation, the Wortham Foundation, the Elkins Foundation, the Fondren Foundation. These are names I hope you know from so much of their civic activity in Houston and contributions. The Onstead Foundation, Max and Rochelle Levitt, the Hobby Foundation, the Powell Foundation, Georgiana Scruggs, and to everyone who has contributed, supported our capital campaign, our 10-year plan. There are so many of you. And I'd also like to thank our former and current board members and committee members who are here today. I want to call out Steve Jenkins, who served as our board chair for 7 years. Thank you, Steve Jenkins. He played just an incredibly important role in standing by my side and our side in getting us where we are today. And I want to call out our MPC staff members. If you can raise your hands, it is truly an honor to serve with our MPC staff members. And in that vein, I want to thank and congratulate Randy Odenay for the incredible job that he's done with the project partners in executing all of these projects for the last several years. Andrew, Lisa, I mentioned many of you, Sarah, This is just the best team that you can imagine. Steve Dunn, Walter, I mean, there are many of you that are working on this together, and I'm hoping I'm not leaving anyone out. And of course, Thomas, Jeff, Kate, and their Nelson Bird Waltz team, just one of the most powerful teams I've ever known. And finally, again, our presenting sponsor, Kinder Foundation, leading us in so many ways. That, to me, this is so important because it demonstrates their commitment to caring for the park and the value that they espouse, caring for what we build. It takes both halves of that equation. And so thank you, Nancy, Rich, and the Kinder Foundation, again, for presenting today's event program. And we look forward to seeing you all on December 10th and 11th. Thank you, everyone.